Hey, what's going on, everyone? Zeusiver here, welcoming you to the CPL Minors Season 1 post-draft grades. This is the first video where we're going to be looking at how each coach is doing in the CPL Minors and ranking them. For the post-draft, we are just going to be giving grades out, just because it's kind of hard to rank drafts without seeing how they played. But through the series, I will not be alone. I'll be joined by my two co-hosts. First up, we have PureAwesome. Say hello.
Hello.
He is a former CPL Majors coach, and he's hanging out in the Discord server, just chilling with us. So graciously, he's joining us this power rankings. And then we also have a fellow newcomer to the CPL Majors in WordLife. Say what's up.
Hey, how's it going? I also go by Choke Life or Lord Wife, whatever. But yeah, I'm really pretty excited to do this.
Yeah, so the CPL minors are actually happening before the majors. That's why me and WordLife have time to do this, and I was interested in doing it, so figured why not. So we're
Yeah,
gonna be
same.
going in order of how the draft order went down. So we're actually gonna be starting off here with Shadow's team. He drafted Excadrill, Keldeo, Hippowdon, Florges, Shaman, Lycanroc Midday, Curlia, Mega Ampharos, Landorus Incarnate, Salazzle, Azelf, and Roserade. So, what do you think of this team, Pure?
Uh, the team can be scary, especially with sand offense. It's naturally scary, but I mean, I think he has 4 Mons that. I mean, yeah, with Hippowdon, he has 4 Mons that essentially are a lot better in sand. So I feel like people just prep for sand and then prep for his 3 to 4, good special attackers, and then that's it. Like, I feel like this team is pretty easy to prep for. Not only that, but he's essentially playing with one less Mon. With Curlia, it's one less Mon that his opponents have to prep for because it's a meme pick because he lost a bet. And then, yeah, so prep against him is basically a coin flip. It's either like you either prep heavily for sand or you prep heavily for that special attacking core with Keldeo and Salazzle and Roserade and Mega Ampharos. And if you get it right and you prep for the right composition, then yeah, it's basically just a coin flip. There's a 50-50 chance you're going to have a huge matchup advantage.
Nice. And what do you think, Word?
Basically, bring a grass type and 2 assault vest users, and this team gets 6-0'd at preview, pretty much. But not really. Well, you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
This team there's going to be like a couple matchups where it just kind of 6-0s at team preview, and there's going to be a couple where it gets bopped just at matchup. He doesn't have really good like setup. Like he's got like Nasty Plot Salazzle and like Calm Mind Keldeo, and like he's got like a couple, like you can run Calm Mind Florges, but like his ways of like breaking opposing setup mons aren't the best. Like look at Calm Mind Iron Defense Necrozma and look at his team.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just it's an odd team. Also, Mega Ampharos Curlia Excadrill is the most fire Fairy Dragon Steel core of all time. I'm just gonna say that. But yeah, that's pretty much my take on it. Also, Roserade and Shaman, like I don't get why both of them. Plus, like double grass and double poison in Rose and Salazzle. I'm not really a fan of that. Also, the speed tiers are a bit weird. He doesn't. Yeah. Well, yeah. Some of the speed tiers are a little odd. Nothing that outspeeds, uh, like Torn or Greninja or something like that. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the team, but it's definitely like in certain matchups it'll be super threatening.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what both you guys said. When you draft the Sand team, you're going to be drafting a lot of common weaknesses. He's got 5 Mons weak to ice. He's got 5 Mons weak to water. He also has 5 Mons weak to ground. So it's like If you bring a strong water type that has ice coverage and strong ground type, you're going to be able to handle this team pretty offensively. And like Pierre said, it's just a coin flip of how you prep for this team. Is it going to be sand, or is it going to be more heavily focused on the special attackers? So
Yeah, like if his opponent has a Tangrowth, it's pretty much GG.
yeah, Tangrowth does do work outside of like the Salazzle and Roserade, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, like it can take a hit from Salazzle and just kill it with Earthquake. So,
Yeah, oh definitely.
but yeah, I get what you're saying though. But
Alright.
are we gonna move on to Lamrin?
Yeah, so second pick was Cameron, and he drafted Tapu Koko, Victini, Gengar, Porygon Z, Donphan, Uxie, Barbarcle, Mega Aerodactyl, Empoleon, Halucha, Serena, and Druddigon. So, what do you think about Lamrin's team word?
So, this is I think I have this as my favorite. It's probably tied actually for my favorite draft. It's one of my favorite drafts. I think this is a really good way to draft around Tapu Koko. He's got. I really love the Coco Victini Volturn core. I love that a lot. Plus, you've got like slower U-turners as support in like Serena and Uxie. Uh, I love. He has so many stealth rockers. I love hazards and hazard control in a draft. To me, that's like a top like two most important thing you need in a draft. And my least favorite drafts have the thing in common where they have very limited rockers or hazard removers. This team has great removal and great rockers. I think a spiker would be good on this team, but it's not like the end of the world. I love, like I said, I love the Volturn. He's got strong breakers in Gengar and Porygon Z. I think a good fighting type. Well, there's Halucha, but I think another strong fighting type would be good to like break Darks and Steels for Porygon and Gengar. But again, not the end of the world. His support mons and Empoleon, Donphan, Uxie, Druddigon, Serena. I really like how they support his bigger threats and like his fast cleaners and Arrow and Lucha and his breakers and Victini, Gengar, and Porygon Z. I really just like the composition of the team a lot. I think I think this is like one of the better ways to draft around Coco, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty well balanced team for Coco. What do you think, Pierre?
I don't see this team quite as effective for like just a few reasons. One, almost half the team, and by almost I mean like 5 out of 12 Mons are weak to ground. So ground, like, yes, he has 3 immunities, but ground type, like offensive ground types like Crocodile and Mamoswine can carry a lot of, like, have a secondary stab that does a lot to his immunities. And so I feel like ground spam can, outside of 1 or 2 Mons, can kind of run through this team a little bit. Obviously, like, he can prep around that, but just 5 weaknesses. It doesn't matter how many immunities you have. 5 weaknesses is not good. That's almost half your team. And then also, he doesn't really have any hazard options outside of Stealth Rocks. So yeah, you commented on this that like a spike setter would be really great, because if the opponent has a really good defogger or a really good spinner, they can just keep getting those rocks away, and all of a sudden, like, that doesn't help his sweepers at all.
He does have options to punish spinners in both Gengar and like a Ruskin Rocky Helmet Druddigon. So there is that option to punish like spinners, but yeah, like a really reliable defogger can be a problem for this team. But I think it really just depends on how he plays it. Because like if he keeps pressure up with his Volt Turn and with his breakers, I think he can pressure opposing defoggers enough to really get good footing. But I do see what you're saying.
Right. And I think the lack of versatility, or the lack of different hazards, the fact that he only has access to 1 out of 4 hazards, I think that's going to make life really hard on his offense. But like you said, his offense is really, really good. Like it's really good. That there's no other way to really say it. So that's probably why I don't have him like at the bottom, but I don't like the draft just due to the massive ground weakness and not like rocks are the only hazard, and that's it.
Yeah, I think I agree a little bit more with Pure on this. One on the obvious ground weakness he has, but I also think his defensive mons don't really have too much in terms of recovery. I know Serena has like Synthesis, but like Donphan, Napoleon, Drudagon, Uxie, they don't really have like reliable recovery. So it's like, yeah, they can come in and take a hit for one of his offensive mons because all of his offensive mons are pretty frail. But like they can't like continuously switch in. So like a really defensive team could be trouble for Cameron, and that's kind of why I have it at a B minus. But I do like his offense a lot. And then moving into the third pick, we have mid with Celesteela, Latias, Gliscor, Gyarados, Chandelure, Blastoise, Zebstrika, Mega Diancie, Buzzwole, Amoonguss, Alolan Persian, and Lycanroc Dusk. So what do you think of mid's team, Pure? And we're back. Sorry about that. Had some technical difficulties, but Pure, tell me what you think about mid's team here.
Okay, so just looking across the team, like the offense is like really unique, and I think it's going to be really hard to prep for because you have Celesteela, which can be very annoying to deal with. Gyarados, like, yeah, it's weak to electric, but electric and rock are like its only weaknesses, and has a giant, Spadef that I don't think a lot of people remember. So Gyarados is going to be hard to deal with. Amoonguss is going to be hard to deal with. This team in general is going to be hard to prep for. But in terms of like a defensive core, outside of Gliscor, Amoonguss, Blastoise, and Celesteela, I think that's really just about it in terms of defense. And not to mention, 2 of those 4 are weak to ice, one of the remaining 2 takes ice neutrally. So, a powerful icebreaker can pretty much break the defense apart. Buzzwole can be a little defensive, but it's essentially just a worse Kartana. And then also, I don't really see Lycanroc's purpose on this team because Diancie has the exact same speed tier. Diancie and Gliscor set rocks. Diancie, outside of Lycanroc's Z move, Diancie hits harder. And Diancie also has a secondary Fairy Stab that I don't believe adds any extra weaknesses. I can't remember if rock resists poison.
I believe it does, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
So they have the exact same set of weaknesses. And I think that also, like, I don't think the Z users are best just because I don't see Lycanroc's purpose on the team. I think Gyarados and Alolan Persian are much better because that way you get Z Parting Shot to completely heal up the guy who comes in. And then also Gyarados, it gives it a reliable flying stab. I mean, I get that it's only a one-time use, but at least it gives Gyarados flying stab. The reliable flying stab, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think about mid's team, Word?
Well, the first thing that jumped out at me about this team is the godly Fairy Dragon Steel core. That is a really, really good FDS core. Like, it's almost perfect. Like, it's really, really good in my opinion. It gives you, not only does it give you offensive presence, but all three of those mons are pretty decent two-way mons. Mega Diancie not so much, but it has enough bulk to eat like one hit if it needs to. I've gotten pretty creative with Diancie sets in the past, but that Fairy Dragon Steel core makes this team really, really threatening just off the bat. However, the speed tiers, 3 base 110s, 3 base 80s. That's not ideal. Gyarados is base 80, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I believe
Or
so.
it's 79, I think.
Yeah, close enough. Three,
Yeah.
three base 80s, three base 110s. Um, makes it really easy to pick Scarfers and speed control against his team. Because and just the way his threats are designed. Also, I agree with you. The double rock core is not the best. Although it is his own. Lycanroc is his only form of priority, so that might be why he picked it up. Um, and just to avoid, because Gliscor is stretched pretty thin on this team, because the way his team is set up, he'll definitely need he definitely wants removal because it looks like he'll be doing a lot of switching with this team.
Mhm.
And he definitely wants to bring removal, and his only removal is Latias, Gliscor, and Blastoise. Blastoise is not the best remover just because it has no recovery, and if they have a ghost type, then obviously that makes spin a lot less viable. Gliscor is one of three rockers and one of three defoggers. It's going to be forced to run one or the other a lot of the time. It'll be stretched pretty thin. Although I do think Gliscor is a pretty great mon. I think it's underrated. And yeah, like I said, not the biggest fan of his rockers and removers. Selly Diancie, obviously great core. Zebstrika is not a Pokemon. Amoonguss. Amoonguss, I do like the Spore support with this team a lot, actually. I really like the Spore support Amoonguss provides, and another Fairy Resist outside of Selly that also resists. I like the Selly Amoonguss pairing. I don't like the dual waters, both weak to electric. I'm not a huge, neither of which with recovery. They do fill different roles, but I don't know how I feel about the dual waters. Shandy's cool. I haven't used Shandy, but it hits hard. But again, the speed tiers are weird, and Persian is good for the parting shot momentum. But yeah, it's pretty middle of the road, kind of top heavy. Some odd speed tiers and some like I'm not sure how I feel about his lower tiers, but a pretty threatening team to be sure.
Yeah, I definitely think that both of you guys said a lot of what I had. One thing though that wasn't mentioned was Bolt Beam kind of runs through his team. Like 6 of his
Yeah,
12 mons are weak to either Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. And like a lot of his defensive core, like Amoonguss, Gliscor, and if he runs bulky Latias or bulky Celestelia, it's not really wants to go in for a Bolt Beam on. Um, Also, I really wish he would have made Illusion Persian a Z-Mon, because Z parting shot on this team, with how bulky it is, would be just, you would never would be able to break this team.
yeah.
Also, like you said, with his speed tiers being so weird, he doesn't really have a good Scarf Mon. Like he doesn't have like a
Yeah,
really good.
his most viable Scarfer is Lottie
Hmm.
and like Buzzwole and
Yeah.
Shandy can run Scarf, but like Shandy and Buzzwole are both slow Scarfers. They don't even outspeed like Hoopa Unbound,
Hmm.
and they have to run like almost max speed Jolly just to outspeed Mega Lopunny, and I don't think they can outspeed Mega Alakazam, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then you
Um,
really don't want Latias to be a Scarfer, just because I tend, whenever I use Latias, to like having a more utility set, so like having like Toxic or Defog or Roost, so
or Healing Wish,
or
yeah,
Healing Wish. So it's like, yeah, you can run Scarf with some of those moves, but like you're gonna be forced to switch out more times than not. So
yeah,
I think you'll do good with the team, but I do see some weaknesses from it.
yeah. It's definitely depending on matchup.
Hmm. And moving into the fourth pick, we have Pyronox with Kieran Black, Clefable, Superior, Greninja, Espeon, Jellicent, Machamp, Mega Steelix, Zapdos, Nihilego, Diggersby, and Combuskin. So, what do you think of Pyro's team WordLife?
I really love this team. It may not. I'm biased because this team has quite a few of my like comfort mons in like Clef, Zapdos, Greninja, Superior, Nihilego, mons that I just really love to use. So I'm biased towards it. But I also think this team is just really well balanced. It's got good speed tiers. It's got a really good Volt Turn core in Zapdos, Greninja as well. Two really strong breakers. I do like the Curum Clefable core, although I think a better fairy to pair with KB is Florges, just for the defog support. But obviously, Clefable is just a huge threat. I'm a big Clefable fan, and it does give him a rocker. Which he does. He only has 3 rockers, but they're all pretty reliable rockers, so I can't be mad at that. And Zapdos is really his only viable mover. He does have Espeon, but Espeon's not great. But yeah, I like the speed tiers. I like the way he supported Kyurem Black. I'm not sure how I feel about Machamp. I don't know what could have fit better, but I don't know how I feel about Machamp on the team. But I do like the Fairy Dragon Steel core a lot. And Serp is really cool on this team to glare things for KB and to just be a nuisance in general, as well as he has 2 T Spikers for Clefable. Overall, I'm a pretty big fan of this team.
Yeah, I think we're all a big fan. What do you think of Pyro's team, Pure?
Like, I just want to throw this out there at the very beginning. This is my highest rated team, and for good reason. Usually with all the other teams, there's 1 or 2 mons that you're only going to bring 1 to 2 weeks. Maybe you don't even bring them at all in the case of Zebstrika on the previous team.
Yeah.
But there's not a single mon on this team that I don't think has any value. Like, even Machamp, usually I see Machamp in leagues as a high tier 3. Being a tier 5 in this league, I think, is a steal. Because
Wait, it was tier 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's his tier 5. Or is one of his tier 5s.
That's borked. Never mind. I take it back. Good God. I take back what I said about Machamp. Tier 5 cheap champ for the win. Good God. Okay, yeah. Anyway, go on.
I love, you mentioned this, but I love the double toxic spikes. It makes things really easy for Kyurem and Superior. Yeah, his hazard removal isn't the best, but I think Espeon existing prevents certain teams from wanting to run hazards, because he could easily switch in Espeon and all their hazards all of a sudden are working against them. So I love Espeon in this team. Usually I don't see it drafted, but like, this is a team I really think it'll work. You mentioned speed tiers being amazing. I think Mega Steelix is a very underrated Mega. Also, he has Mega Steelix for a massive physical wall and Nihilego for a massive special wall. Granted, they're both weak to ground, but Superior, Zapdos, he has lots of things that can come in on ground.
Yeah.
And yeah, the only problem I have is a lack of a rapid spinner, because the defoggers are Serp and Zapdos. But yeah, like I said, Espeon, it'll keep some teams from running hazards, but not all of them. So I think a spinner would really help this team.
Yeah, and like Pure, this is also my highest draft team or graded team. Actually gave it an A+. I think this team has really good cores. The Fairy Dragon Steel core, I think's really underrated with Mega Steelix, but Kyurem Black and Clefable are like 2 of their best Dragon and Fairy types. I think he also has 2 really great breakers, both in Z Kyurem Black and Superior. It's gonna be really hard to switch into Kyurem Black on anything, just because you don't know if it's either physical or special. Nothing really wants to take a Z Sub-Zero Slammer from the Free Shock. I also think he has two of the best defensive mons in Clefable and Zapdos. One being physically defensive in Zapdos with the static, and also just Clefable having being able to wish pass into like Zapdos or into any of his offensive mons. And besides that, just really good speed tiers, a lot of momentum on his team as well. So he's not gonna be like locked into anything. And Machamp being tier 5 is stupid. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's actually I had no idea it was tier 5. That is so ridiculous.
All right. So moving on, we have Levine. He has a Landorus Fairy, Tapu Fini, Xurkitree, Lucario, Bombay, Sneasel, Gerbroder, Mega Zam, Salamence, Arcanine, Snorlax, and Volbeat. So, what do you think of Levine's team here?
First off, I just want to applaud him for picking the right Z users, because on a team with Lando and Salamence, where your other Z user would be Volbeat, I think Volbeat is his tier 5, that I think picking Xurkitree and Sneasel were the right mons, because Lando, I don't think needs Z moves. Yeah, it likes them, but I don't think it needs Z moves. Same thing with Salamence. I don't think it needs Z moves. Xurkitree needs Z moves, in my opinion. Xurkitree, like, absolutely needs Z moves. This team is a little slow. Like, there's a gap in, like, the speed tiers. Like, you have Sneasel, Rabombi, and Alakazam, and then everything else, I believe, is 100 or lower. So there's a decent gap, but there's sticky web support to back it up. The problem is I think he'll be a little too reliant on webs. And if he's reliant on webs, then he really needs a spinner, which I don't believe he has. And then also, just the defoggers just aren't the best. Tapu Fini is going to be forced into that role a lot. Because Lando takes rocks neutrally, Salamence is weak to rocks, Arcanine's weak to rocks, Sneasel's weak to rocks. I believe there's 5 weaknesses across this team.
And Rabombe as well.
Yeah. So I think I honestly don't see Garbodor coming that much, because he needs defog, and he's not going to set up hazards if like, he's kind of forced to run sticky webs, but he's not going to want to defog his own hazards away. But like, he needs defog on this team, like on most weeks.
And what do you think of the team, Word?
I'm gonna just come out and say this is like definitely my least favorite of draft. Like, I really don't like this team at all. Levain's a cool dude. He's a good battler. He's solid, definitely, but this team is pretty horrible. I'm gonna be real. This is like a textbook example of how not to draft around Lando T. First off, he has one rocker, and it's Lando. That is horrible. Like, Lando can be one of the most versatile format, but not if you have to shoehorn it into a bulky stealth rock roll every week. Secondly, yeah, the team is slow, but he does have webs. However, you already mentioned the problem with no spinner with webs. Very rock weak. The Lando Zam combination is pretty nice. Look at Weavile and look at this team. Just a 6-0 from preview. I really don't like the 2 4 times ice weaknesses, even though he does have a few very good ice checks in Lax, Arcanine, and Fini, as well as like Lucario to Revenge. But this team, I feel as though too many mons are shoehorned into roles that they don't necessarily always want to be in every week. However, I do think he will be able to clutch. I think Snorlax will actually be his biggest threat, just based on the team he's built around it. I think Snorlax is actually really like well built around on this team. However, I think he's just stretched a lot of his bigger threats too thin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think like what seemed like some like really offensive mons like Lando and like the Salamence, both being quad weak to ice. Lando's gonna be forced into a bulkier role when it really could, benefit from being a scarf set or a banded set even. He does have double intimidate, which is pretty good. It's actually pretty nice for the Snorlax, like you said, being like one of his bigger threats. Um, and then like he might bring Garbodor, to be able to take physical attack or fighting type attacks as well for the Snorlax. I guess Volbeat is an interesting mon with the Tail Glow and Baton Pass. I guess into like a Scarf Circuitry is gonna be the best bet, or I guess Mega Zam also is a pretty big threat with a Tail Glow up. But
I mean, Circuitry gets
or
Tail Glow
is
itself.
yeah, but that way it doesn't have to take the hit. But yeah.
Fair, yeah. Well, it would have to take a hit anyway because like Volbeat has Prankster, so Baton Pass always goes first.
Yeah, you're right.
So not sure how I love Volbeat on this team. Like this team has individual threats. I just think the composition is bad.
Yeah. I think I agree with what you both said. So moving on,
Yeah,
what were you gonna say?
I was going to say one last thing. The reason I think I might have the team a little higher than you guys is just purely based off the individual threats. I think it's going to be really hard, or at least more difficult than some teams, to prepare for all of them. Because Lando T, granted, Lando T and Salamence both take the same prep, but, Lucario's going to take a lot of prep because that's an underrated threat. Arcanine takes a lot of prep. Snorlax takes a lot of prep.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the other teams and if they can have enough checks to all of his threats, because his team is really offensive with like a couple defensive mons is the way I look at it. So moving on, we have BloodCrawler with Mew, Tornadus Farian, Ferrothorn, Raikou, Incineroar, Aromatisse, Toxicroak, Mega Swampert, Pelipper, Venomoth, Zoroark, and Goodra. So, what do you think of BloodCrawler's team, Pure?
I think Word goes first on this one. I went first on the last one.
Okay, my bad. What do you think of his team Word?
It's definitely a scary team. It is Rain, but I think this is like the best Rain team I've seen. Mew Rain is really cool. First off, Mew and Torn T are two of like my top 5 favorite mons in the format. So again, I'm biased because it just has like comfort mons. But I love the Torn, Raikou, Incineroar, Volt Turn core, Pelipper too. A lot of Volt Turn into the big threats, or into they're really the only big threat he has is Mega Swampert, but it's just a really like synergetic team, I think, with a lot of it has some versatile mons in a style that is seen usually as one-dimensional in weather. Zoroark is a cool like niche option for this team. Like if you want to disguise it as like Mew or Mega Swampert, that's a pretty cool niche option that you can use. I like Goodra. A lot of people don't like Goodra. I like Goodra. Obviously Pharaoh, a staple on Rain teams. He does only have 3 rockers, one of which is Mew. However, I think Ferrothorn is one of those rockers that you're completely fine with bringing rocks on like every week. I don't think that's that big a deal. But like I said, it's not like his only breaker is Mega Swampert, really. He doesn't have other like great break, although Mew and Torn are good at breaking fat, but his hardest hitter is Mega Swampert. He does have some threatening sweepers, though. Overall, I like the team. I like the Fairy Dragon Steel core. I like the Fire Water Grass core. Yeah, that's it.
Nice. And what do you think, Pierre? Looks like you got a pretty high grade for him.
Yeah, because I've used Torn T and I didn't like it. And I believe the biggest reason I didn't like it is because I didn't have it on a rain team and I missed a lot of hurricanes. Torn T is so much better when it's on a rain team. Like I think I think it's an entire tier difference between on rain or off rain. And this guy built a rain team correctly. I've already mentioned Torn. Mew is really cool. One problem I have with the team is that he doesn't have too much hazard options. Like you said, like he's really only got rocks, I believe, unless Toxicroak gets Toxic Spikes. Does it get Toxic Spikes?
It doesn't.
It doesn't? Okay.
Venomoth does.
Oh, okay. So that's something, but usually Venomoth is always forced into that Quiver Dance role. But again, Toxic Spikes, I guess I forgot about that. But of the rockers, yeah, Ferrothorn's gonna be coming like every week. But it's a really good rain team. Ferrothorn works with the team really well. And I'm very curious to see how he uses Zoroark. I think Zoroark can work on this team really, really well. And Zoroark works best on teams that forces specific prep. So when people have to switch into the prep that they need for what they think the Zoroark is, the Zoroark sets up a nasty plot in their face and proceeds to do a lot of stuff. I also love the defensive Fairy Dragon Steel Core. Like I really, really like the Fairy Dragon Steel Core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he did draft a really good weather team just because, unlike with Shadow's sand team where he has a lot of common weaknesses, on this rain team there's not like a ton of like shared weaknesses. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of mons weak to electric. There's only one mon that's weak to grass. One mon weak to fire in the Ferrothorn. Oh, I guess with Venomoth. He does have 4 mons that have quad weaknesses, so he will have to be kind of cautious about, hidden powers on everything. Because like a hidden power psychic is gonna bop a Toxicroak. HP electric could bop a Pelipper. I really love Torn T. Torn T is like one of my top 3 or top 4 mons in League format. And like you said, Pure in a weather team, he actually excels a lot more because he's actually going to hit all of his hurricanes. And then I think the sleeper on the pick is actually going to be Goodra because I think with hydration, Goodra is going to be just a really hard mon to kill. It's going to be fat, it's going to have rest and hydration, and it's just going to probably Dragon Tail, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see BloodCrawler use this rain team.
Curse Goodra is a threat. I'm just saying.
Curse Goodra is a threat in hydration.
I 6-0'd a guy with Curse Rest Talk Dragon Tail Goodra. Goodra is underrated.
Yeah, Goodra does get a lot of flack, but I don't know why. Moving on to the next team, we have Rio. He has Kartana, Terrakion, Zeraora, Milotic, Stakataka, Slurpuff, Piloswine, Megalodios, Manabuzz, Entei, Mismagius, and Tornadus Incarnate. So what do you think of this team, Pure?
First off, just looking across the team, I don't really see a ton that stands out as being a problem. I think this team is just overall extremely solid. The offense is very balanced between physical and special. I think the defensive mons check each other's weaknesses fairly well. Webs plus rocks, I think, are kind of nice, especially when you have speed tiers that are a little close in Kartana and Terrakion. And so, yeah, covering each other's weaknesses, I think, works really well because Zeraora takes the electric for Milotic. Latios can take grass and stuff for Milotic. Like the defensive synergy, I think, is really, really good on this team. And also Stack Attacka for I'm biased. Stack Attack. I love Stack Attacka.
What do you think? What do you think of this team, Word?
This team has flaws, but it is so hard to prep for. It's pretty similar to a team I used a while back in a different. It was a Megalodios team too, and it also had Terrakion on it, and I also had Stack Attacka on it, paired with Durant instead of Kartana. I do like that dual steel core with the faster offensive threat with the 4 times weakness that it forces you to pick the 4 times weakness to punish on 2 very opposite offensive threats. I like that a lot. Terrakion and Megalodios complement each other very well offensively. Zeraora, very cool speed, very good speed control. I'm a big fan of Zeraora. Mandibuzz will be on this team. The one problem is that he'll be forced to bring Piloswine almost every week for rocks unless he wants to run rocks Terrakion a lot, and that's not necessarily the best Terrakion set. Although Piloswine is a really good mon, but that's a minor nitpick. I really like this team a lot. Torn Eye is okay. It's a decent U-turner, pretty good speed tier, good defogger. He's got it under webs. This team is so hard to prep for. Some of the teams in this league without a lot of reliable defoggers will just get 6-0'd by this team, pretty much.
Yeah, I like this team a lot for the same reason you guys said. One thing I do want to point out is while he does have webs with Slurpuff, he doesn't have a spinner. I know we mentioned that with a couple coaches back.
That's true.
So that's a little bit of a hindsight thing where, are you going to want to defog your own webs away or what? Because he does need to get rocks off of his team fairly often with, Mandibuzz being weak to him, Entei being weak, Torn being weak to it. I also think that there's actually going to be a lot of pressure on Milotic and Mandibuzz just because they both share that weakness in electric. So I do feel like Piloswine's going to come more often than not, or he's going to have to probably try to predict switching in a Zeraora on an electric type move, but you don't really want to be switching in Zeraora on any kind of hit because if the other coach predicts that, Zeraora can take a really hard hit. But yeah, just a really aggressive team with some really good speed tiers. He has speed control as well in both Tailwind and Webs, which with his speed tiers might not be the most necessary thing, but otherwise I think a good team.
Yeah, I don't think he relies on Webs. I just think Webs make his team a lot better because he does have other forms of speed control.
Mm-hmm.
He also has Trick Room.
Yeah,
he has Trick Room. He's got Priority. He's got really good Scarfers. Yeah, big fan of this team.
And moving on, we have Sohum with the Blacephalon, Thunderous Farian, Hydreigon, Suicune, Nidoqueen, Swallow, Granbull, Megalopunny, Scizor, Reuniclus, Vanillix, and the Leafeon. So, what do you think of this team, Word?
I love Volturn, and this is a Volturn team. This offense that is really really well done. I think the Blacephalon Lopunny core is a little overrated, I should say, but it's still obviously super threatening, especially if you don't have especially depending on the matchup. And he's got his Volt Turners are all threats on their own as well as picking up momentum. Thundy, I like the Thundy Coon combination. Coon on this team, Coon and Reuni in tandem with his like momentum core is super threatening because you're forced to run Scarfers against this team. If you don't run Scarfers or some form of speed control, then Blacephalon and Lope are just gonna 6-0 you. And Reuni and Kuhn punish Scarfers and like speed control heavy teams like very, very well. Reuni is gonna be a huge threat on this team. I predict at least one team to get 6-0 swept by Reuni this season, if not more. Swellow, pretty cool pick. A lot of versatile mons on this team. Nidoqueen, Swellow, Thundy, pretty versatile. I don't really see what Vanillux is there for, other than like memes, but I also don't like Granbull as the fairy, but it's not the worst mon you could pick up as a low tier. But Nidoqueen too. I like Nidoqueen as the ground type on this team. And Leafeon isn't a real Pokemon. But yeah, really like this team a lot. Really scary.
What do you think? Not word Pure.
I think that I do not envy the guy at all who has to prep for this, because Volt Turn on top of Swellow plus Suicune plus Mega Lopunny plus Blacephalon, that's just a nightmare. The one thing that I don't like about this team, the only reason I don't have it as an A rating, is because Nidoqueen, I believe, is the only hazard setter.
Yeah, I actually have that in my notes. I forgot to mention it. Yeah, that's a big knock on this team.
Right. I think he's going to have to rely on Nidoqueen way, way, way too much. And then also Nidoqueen plus Suicune is going to be, Scizor is like physically defensive, but it doesn't have the greatest special defense in the world. I think the defensive core of it is really lacking, especially since you brought up the point that Granbull isn't really going to come a lot, and that's his intimidator. So I think he's not going to beat you through switching out and getting the correct matchups and everything. He's going to beat you by sending in threat after threat after threat until he just beats you into submission.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what you just said there, Pure. It's not like, yeah, he does have some like really bulky mons and like Reuniclus and Suicune, but he's gonna get like a lot of bang from like his big offensive mons like Blacephalon, Megalopunny, Z Thundurus, Fairy, and Hydreigon, Swellow as well. It's hard to switch into a Boom Burst, or if it's a Flame Orb with Facade, that's gonna be hard to switch into that. I don't like Vanillux being the Z-Mon. I mean, the only other option was going to be Granbull, but I think Vanillux...
Granbull is a better Z-Mon because of Z-Hill, though.
Yeah.
I would say.
I mean, I like Vanillux more so as like a Specs, just spam Blizzard Mon than anything, so I don't know how often... he's going to bring it as a Z-Mon, especially if he... is bringing it Snow Warning. He might not be able to run Z-Hail. And like you said, Leafeon just is out of place in this team and in the game itself. So
yeah, if you're gonna pick up a budget grass, pick up like Tangela because it actually beats Zygarde. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. But overall, really, really good team, I think. Really offensive.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have Dex, who has Garchomp, Weavile, Cresselia, Volcanion, Araquanid, regular Deontay, Tangela, Megalade, Jolteon, Skarmory, Darmanitan, and Komala. So, what do you think of Dax's team, Pure?
I think that any reliable physical wall outside of Jolteon is going to completely destroy this team, or at least be able to wall most of it, because outside of Jolteon and Volcanion, I'm going to talk about Volcanion in a little bit. Every single hitter is physical. I mean, Cresselia, yeah, it's a special hitter, but Cresselia doesn't hit that hard anyways. So I think how you beat this team is you send in a Mon and you click the reflect button immediately, and the majority of his offense is just shut down. Unless he brings Defog, which is only Skarmory. Skarmory is his only defogger. And then also going back, I said I'd mentioned Volcanion. Volcanion, I think, is completely dead weight on this team. I don't see, outside of a good special attacker, I don't see how you'd ever bring it over Darmanitan or Araquanid, because Araquanid gets up webs, which Garchomp and Weavile and Mega Gallade force a lot of Scarfers, so webs are really nice. So if you're bringing Araquanid, you're not really going to bring the double water. And then Darmanitan, I think, is just overall harder to prep for, so I think he'd want to bring that over Volcanion. I don't see Volcanion's place on this team at all. And yeah, just basically reflect or Aurora Veil and you win.
Very, very accurate. What do you think, Word?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Pierce said. I like a lot of the mons on this team. The Weavile Gallade core is obviously well known and like very effective. Garchomp is, in my opinion, one of the best mons in draft format in general. He's got solid rockers. Garchomp and Skarm are super reliable rockers. The Jolteon Darm core is good. This team actually has 5 of the 8 mons I have on my team that I'm using against the CPL in a league war right now. So that's pretty. Yeah, Garchomp, Jolteon, Araquanid, Skarm, and Darm are all on that team. So I thought that was pretty funny. But this team is, yeah, like you said, it has a hard time breaking physical walls, but his big physical threats do kind of break each other's checks. Like Weavile breaks psychics for Gallade. Gallade and Garchomp both break bulky steels for Weavile. He does have a hard time with like bulky waters, like a Milotic or something like that would be a big nuisance to this team. But and I'm not a huge fan of the hazard removal on the team. Komala is not a Pokemon in any sense of the word. Komala is so freaking bad. Like, it's one of those mons where you look at it and you're like, hey, this isn't that bad. Like, why isn't this used more? And then you try to prep with it and you're like, wow, this thing can't do anything. Like, it's so bad. Like, honestly, just pick any other normal type besides Komala. Like, I hate F Komala. Yeah. But Tangela's cool. Cresselia, fat bitch. Skarm, fat bitch. Deancey, I don't know, maybe a tad out of place, but he does need a fairy, so I can see why. It has threats, but it also has pretty glaring flaws as well. Hence I think I gave it a B minus. Yeah, so pretty glaring flaws, but also really like high level threats.
Yeah, I do agree with a lot of what you said. I feel like webs plus like Darmanitan and Mega Gallade is just gonna be really crucial that the opponent plans for, because that's gonna be pretty scary to run like a banded Darmanitan over Scarfed. That's gonna be hard to switch into, but like Pure said, bring Reflect, and you're pretty comfortable in this matchup. His only really special attackers are Jolteon and Volcanion, and they're both weak to ground, so it's like If you have a Scarfer who outspeeds Jolteon who can run Earthquake, you're gonna be fine against those two. I like Tangela a lot. I think it's a slightly undervalued Mon, but with Leech Seed and also Regen, and then having access to knockoff on certain switch-ins. Granted, you have like Weavile as well for knockoff, but couple mons are quad weak with the Garchomp and Weavile and Deontay, but I think it could be good team. I just think it's gonna have to prep pretty well for physical walls and reflect setters. So moving on, we have Falcon, who has Heatran, Tapu Bulu, Necrozma, Sylveon, Tentacruel, Cryogonal, Cincino, Mega Medicham, Dragonite, Crocodile, Excelgor, and Electrode. So, what do you think of Falcon's team word?
It's really slow. It's really slow. This is just it's got some bulky mons, but because the team is so slow, it is much easier to break those bulky mons because you can Pokemon can run attack boosting natures rather than speed boosting natures. You don't have to run you can this team will rely on switching into things, and it will be hard for him to revenge things without Scarfers or like E-Speed with Dragonite. Excelgor Electrode is underrated, but it's not a mon that will come to every game. It'll come to like a few games. It's not the worst fast electric. It's not as bad as Zebstrika, but it's not like that good. Chinchino, I don't know why Chinchino's there. It's not. Why is there a Chinchino? Excelgor, I love Excelgor. I love that it gets dual spikes. I love its speed. But it's like he has no big threats over base 100. Like he has 3 mons over base 100, but none of them are really like threats. I would not call Chinchino a threat unless the matchup is just like horrendous. Like you just have no normal resist at all. And Electrode is not a threat. It's fast. It's not a threat. Excelgor not a threat. Bulutran is overrated. It's not bad, but especially if you don't have speed control, it's not hard to break. Necrozma can be a big threat on this team. I like the Crook Megamedi. Dragonite is always a threat that requires a lot of prep, and the wish passing from Sylveon into the Bulutran core can be a nuisance. But yeah, he's got 2 stealth rockers. Crook and Heatran, and I feel like Crook will need to be a Scarfer a lot of the time. So Heatran will be pressured to bring rocks like a good amount. And his only removers are Tentacruel and Cryogonal. And those aren't like the best removers, especially when you have a Dragonite and when your team is as weak to spikes as Falcons is. Overall, it's not without its threats, but I think the composition of the team is pretty bad.
What do you think about that, Pure?
I actually think the opposite in terms of hazard removal. I think the double spinner is really nice, especially when you have Dragonite. You don't want that multi-scale broken. You don't want Necrozma taking spikes damage. And I like the defensive synergy across this team. Obviously, like I think Bulutran is it's drafted a lot, but there's a reason it's drafted a lot is because I think it's still really good. And I think Dragonite is really overshadowed in terms of all the dragons that there are between Zygarde and Garchomp. I think Dragonite is very good, and I like the dual spinners with Dragonite being able to keep those hazards away. But the big problems I have with the team are that the only mons on this team that are over base 100 speed are tier 4 or lower. That's kind of compounding on what you said earlier, but like just to reiterate it, speed is a really speed is a problem on this team. But I mean, I'm biased towards Necrozma. I really like Necrozma. I think it's very versatile. I think, you can bring Necrozma in pretty much, there's 4 or 5 different sets you can run for a lot of matchups. I think the team is good defensively. I like I'm a little biased toward the offense. I probably think it looks better than it actually is. But yeah, speed is a massive problem. If he had webs, that would be kind of cool. That would help it a bit, but no webs.
Yeah, webs I think would be really good just because he does have those 2 spinners like you mentioned. And I mean, they are fast spinners as well, so I mean, that kind of helps, but like Word said, they're not necessarily the best spinners. His speed tiers, yeah, like you guys both mentioned, they really don't exist because his 3 fastest mons aren't big threats really at all. I feel like also a few of his mons are going to be kind of shoehorned into specific roles like most games. Like Word said, Crook's going to be forced to run Scarf a lot. I feel like Sylveon's going to be forced to be a cleric for the team more times than not. He's going to have to set up with either Dragonite or Necrozma to have a really good sweeper, just because Metacham's only base 100 speed. And Necrozma's also going to be forced to be a really special setup mon, just because outside of Metacham, being the physical breaker, he doesn't really have a special breaker right off the bat, unless he gets Combine up on Necrozma or if he's spec Sylveon. Heat Rainbow's okay, but it's not hard to plan around. You just don't bring Earthquake, you bring a different ground type attack, and you bring some kind of poison for Bulu. I also don't know if I like the double fairy in Bulu Sylveon. I mean, I know they both do pretty different things, but I don't think you needed to double down on fairy. I think Sylveon could have been a more a faster mon, so that way you actually had a threat that's fast, as opposed to his 3 lower tier mons that are fast. Moving on, we have Zombie with the Zygarde 50%, Infernape, Rotomwash, Tangrowth, Silvally, Cofagrigus, Masquerain, Mega Kingscon, Jirachi, Mamoswine, Ditto, and Frogadier. So, what do you think of this team here?
I think that the Volt turn core on this team, even with Silvally's parting shot, I think it's really good, and it really helps when he has threats like Zygarde and Mamoswine and Jirachi. Just being able to pivot into those and being able to they're just really hard hitters. I think is really, really, really nice on this team. But I do think that the team is a little slow. I think Infernape is the fastest mon.
Yeah, it is.
But he does have the webs to help with that. But there isn't a spinner, I don't think. Yeah, there's no spinner. So again, it's gonna be hard, but I like the volt, I like the slow volt turns into the big threats. That's the part about this team that I like.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, Word?
Well, first off, I've been in a couple leagues with Zombie, or a few. This is a very Zombie team. I've seen him use quite a few of these mons. It suits his play style very well. So that being said, this team, I think requires someone who knows how to use it. It's heavily reliant on the Wish Pass support from Rachi and Kang. Those are two very good Wish Passers, and they both they're both good mons in general. I don't think he drafted well around the Rocky helmet problem for Kang. He will have to try to knock things off with like Tangrowth or Mamo, but I don't think he has great ways of like dealing with the Rocky helmet problem for Kang. I think he drafted pretty well around Zygarde. I think the Rotom Tang defensive core with the Wish support is really really like hard to break. Especially with I like Savali. I like Savali a lot. Oh yeah, that's actually a big notch against his team. Actually, is he doesn't have a fairy type. His fairy type is Savali Fairy. That is why he is not a big reason why he is not higher up, along with the lack of speed on the team. As well as Mamoswine being Jirachi too. I was gonna say I thought Mamoswine was his only really viable rocker because Infernape's not a viable rocker. But Jirachi will be forced to run defensive roles more often than not. Which defensive Rachi is like still like is probably the best Rachi set, but Rachi can be more versatile than that. But I do think Zygarde, this team it kind of enables Zygarde pretty well. I like the dual ground in Zygarde and Mamo. Ditto is actually pretty cool on this team. It throws a monkey wrench in teams whose game plan against this would be just set up in everything's face. Overall, pretty solid team. I think I would actually give this a B if I were to do the rankings again, or like a B minus. But yeah, pretty interesting team.
Yeah, I like what both of you guys said. I like Ditto a lot, just because a lot of people are gonna be like speed creeping the Zygarde with a Scarfer of some sort. So having Ditto to be able to run Scarf and then threaten out whatever is threatening Zygarde's gonna be nice. I think people sleep on bulky Mega Kangaskhan. When I had it in one league I was in, I ran it bulky more times than not. Just because it doesn't need necessarily outspeed a lot of things, especially with web support. Once again, like Pure mentioned, it's webs without a spinner, so I'm not the biggest fan about that. Frogadier is an interesting mon with the Z move. I don't know how often he's going to bring that, but it's something you have to consider when prepping. And then not having a fairy outside of Savali is a pretty big negative against this team. But other than that, I like his defensive core pretty well. He has good priority in Mamoswine and Infernape, and also I guess Frogadier as well with Water Shuriken. But yeah, pretty average team I would say with some pretty big threats. So
yeah.
One last thing is that when I like you mentioned, like he drafted well around Zygarde. He picked up the biggest Zygarde check, that being Tangrowth, and then he picked up the biggest Rotom Wash check, that being Zygarde, because Zygarde can still hit it with 1,000 arrows. So yeah, I think he really built around Zygarde really well.
And moving on to the final team, we have King Eevee, who has Latios, Manaphy, Alolan Ninetales, Porygon 2, Chestnut, Weezing, Ninjask, Mega Mawile, Volcarona, Dugtrio, Drapion, and Hitmontop. So, what do you think of Eevee's team, Word?
This team has like really big threats. The Mega Maw Lottie core, that is a huge bitch to deal with, as well as Aurora Veil with Manaphy and Volk. Obviously those two both being base 100 isn't like ideal, but it will force a lot of prep. My main knock against this team is how top heavy I think it is. I think this team heavily falls off after the first 5 months. Also, probably the biggest flaw of this team is that his only defogger is Latios, and he has 2 4x weaknesses to rocks, and another mon weak to rocks in Alolan Ninetales. That is pretty bad. This team is also really spike weak. With like Porygon, Chestnut, Mawile not appreciating switching in on spikes at all. Well, his removal is he has Hitmontop for removal, I guess, but Hitmontop is yikes. But like, and Drapion and Weezing, the dual poison core, interesting. I don't know if I think it's the best. But like I said, really top heavy in terms of threats. Manaphy, Mawile, Lottie, Aurora Veil, super threatening. Dougie to support Lottie and Maw as well, but it falls off kind of heavy after that, in my opinion.
And what do you think of Eevee's team, Pure?
You kind of already mentioned this, but I want to make this point very clear. He will go into every game basically having 5 mons because the opponent is going to absolutely know one mon that will come to every single game, and that is Hitmon. He's not going to want to run Defog Latios. He's not going to want to run it. Hitmontop will come to every single game. Not to mention that he has 3 out of 12. No, 4, because Hitmontop also. Rock resists. The entire rest of his team is either hit neutrally or super effective by Stealth Rocks. He's insanely Spikes weak because of Mawile, Porygon 2, everything like that. His team invites Hazard Stack, and he, I think, has the worst hazard removal across a lot of these teams. I really like the Chestnut pick. I think it's really nice, but again, it conflicts with his Hitmontop because they're both fighting types. So I just feel like the mons on this team individually are fantastic, but they do not synergize well together at all.
Yeah, I don't think he made. I feel like some of the picks could have been switched for something different and have been a lot better. Like, he has Alolan Ninetales, so I don't know why he wouldn't consider having Alolan Sandslash to be at least another spinner, if that alone. But having it be, potential sweeper with Slush Rush could have been nice. I mean, nothing else really takes advantage of the hail outside of Aurora Veil from the Alolan Ninetales. I don't like Ninjask on this team really at all.
Yeah, that's a huge head scratcher. I don't get that pick at all.
Yeah, like if this was a league where you could baton pass speed, I could somewhat understand that pick, but you can't baton pass speed at all. So it's just like it's there to be banded and hit something okay a little bit. He only has 2 mons that can set up Stealth Rocks, being Mega Mawile and Doug Trio. I don't like either of those as a Stealth Rock setter. Mega Mawile is gonna want to be either a substitute with 3 attacks or Swords Dance and 3 attacks. And Doug Trio, I like it as a trapper, but if you're gonna make it a trapper, it's not really gonna want to run rocks, or else it's gonna be Suicide Lead with rocks and uh, with some other moves and Focus Sash. Uh, Weezing Drapion's interesting because they both cover each other's weaknesses. Outside like Excadrill, Excadrill will just blow through both those without a problem. But I also feel like Porygon 2 is gonna have a lot of pressure on this team as like the only bulky mon he has with reliable recovery. I mean, he does have 2 mons that, or like 3 mons that can take a toxic, or that won't get toxic by anything. But yeah, just I feel like with Volcarona and also Ninjask, apparently, he should have at least one other spinner so he has options. But
one thing to clarify is that there has been a rule change. You are now allowed to pass speed, just not with other stats.
Oh, you are allowed to pass speed? Okay. So then that's
That's actually, yeah.
a little more sense, but okay.
But I still understand why Ninjask is a head scratcher when it's just another 4 times weakness on a team that already invites a lot of hazards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that is the last team. So I think looking at it, I think overall, I think we thought Pyronox's team was the best team. Because I think we all gave like at least A's, and I gave it A+. Yeah. But yeah. So just want to make this clear. This is just based off of the drafts. This is not based off of how the coaches are going to use the drafts. You know, just because we like Pyronox's team the most does not mean he's going to be the one that wins it all. He could go 0-12 or how many battles there are. But every week we're going to do, or at least try to do, a power rankings. Might make it like every other week. We'll see. But then we'll actually be able to base it off of how the coaches are playing, and we'll actually be able to rank the teams. But anything you guys want to say?
Just because we say your team is bad doesn't mean we think you're bad, except for Zombie. He's really bad. But yeah, like don't take it personal just because we like question your picks or like bash them. Like just get good, scrub. That's all I have to say.
What about you, Pure? Anything closing this out?
Yeah, just to like keep pushing that point across. There are some people that I think are really, really good battlers that I gave low grades. So, don't take it personal. Just go out there and use the team, the way that you think is best.
Yeah, we're just free people here. We're not professionals. We're not like guaranteed gurus who will predict what's going to happen. This is just our thoughts on the team. So,
Well, I mean, I'm like Jesus, so there's just that. But
there's that small little clause that we forgot.
Yeah, I'm really fucking good at this game. Okay, so don't question me, kid. All right. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, anyways, we'll see you guys next week with the first week of actual power rankings. So see you then.
Yep.